So first I would like to say how much I appreciate being here. This is a wonderful summer school, very enthusiastic, and I was very happy to learn a lot about this community. It's not usually the one that I attend to in my academic life. So it's, I think it's also always fruitful that we share some of the practices and the way we approach the academia in different communities. And my presentation will also maybe be showing a little bit of that, so I think it will be a bit different than what we've seen so far. What I did when Professor Isabel invited me to come and give a lecture, what I thought was a good idea was to maybe talk a little bit in general about the idea of sound design and music design. So I decided to try to shorten a semester course in 40 minutes, maybe, I hope. So I will be showing you a lot of content, a lot of ideas. I will be showing you examples of popular film together with not so popular film and high cult. So I don't really choose in the sense of so much in the, let's say, the quality, or the perceived quality by the film community of the movies, but I chose examples that show a variety of applications of sound in different forms of audiovisual media. So, first, let me just show you. I will try to manage the slide and the microphone and the mouse one in each hand. So, this is a photograph of the place where I come from. I am now working at the University of St. Joseph in Macau. This is a university that's very closely related with the Catholic University of Portugal. You probably heard of Macau because of their casinos. You can see on the background of this photograph many of those casinos. There is the Mandarin Oriental and the Grand Lisboa, that iconic building of Macau. But Macau is not only a place for gambling and casinos or entertainment. It's also a place of higher education more and more. And you can see on the foreground one of the projects that architecture students and the media communication students from my faculty developed recently. It's a bamboo pavilion that is covered with LED light, and it's interactive at night. It's really beautiful. So I recommend that you browse the internet. It's got a lot of international exposure. So if you browse for Pulse Pavilion, you will see a lot of videos and photographs from this installation. And just to tell you that Macau will be on the map soon, I expect, as one of the places in China where higher education is an interesting area to look at. And we are certainly trying to do that for our university. And that's enough about the USA. Well, what about me? I've been working for a few years in this area of sound design and music design. My research is mostly on the area of what we call network music, the idea of making music over long distance networks, over computer networks, the internet. So the idea that you put, for instance, some people in Hong Kong playing some instruments and some people back here in Lisbon, and we can communicate over an acoustic channel and make music together. This is very challenging. If you think you can do it with Skype, you will find out that you cannot, because the latency won't allow you to synchronize musicians. So this is a research area, very extensive. And if you want to know more about it, I recommend that you read my book that is available from Amazon. And since I disagree with the price that my publisher tagged on the book, it's $111 for a research book. I think it's quite a lot. So I'm very happy to send you a PDF if you send me an email. And I'm sure that the editor won't like it, but I also don't like it that they're selling it for such a high price. So if you want to know more about the research that I actually do, you can get my book. But I'm not going to be talking about this at all today. I will be talking about the idea of film and sound and how this affects also the area of audiovisual production. So I will give you some ideas of the motivation why we should, and we are doing this right now, studying sound at the academia as well. Because in fact, as you know, this is a very long-lasting practice in the audiovisual production world. But it's a very recent practice to study how to equate and how to design sound in university. And so I will basically try to approach two ways that we can look at sound and music in audiovisual projects. One is looking at the production process, how people organize themselves in the industry to produce sound, and this is an interesting way to look at it, very pragmatical. And then there's another way to look at it, and this is how usually directors think about sound in film, which is analyzing the content and the message that is conveyed in film through sound. And so I think this is much more exciting. And then I will try to give you just some ideas about how this body of work can reflect in some of the new trends that are now coming up in the business world in different areas. So I would start to make a case for the idea of studying sound. So what many people might not realize is that when you look at a film, most of the sound that you hear is actually, it looks very naturally coming out from this scene, and you might think that it's captured in the same way that you capture with a movie camera, but in fact, in order to make it as realistic as the image that you see, the raw image that you see, you have to do a lot of work in post-production, because sound captured by a microphone is not close to the sound that you hear for many, many reasons. Maybe we'll talk about some of those throughout my presentation. So it is a complex phenomenon, so what we try to do, we'll try to reproduce often up to 80% of the soundtrack of a movie in animation, computer animation, and traditional animation, 100%, there's no sound to start with. We try to reproduce what we have as a psychoacoustic phenomenon in the real world in the sound studio, so it makes something that is people find believable in this scene. It is a challenging and technically complex process, and it requires the collaboration of many of the stakeholders in the filmmaking process. And this is really what my talk is all about, because in my view, studying sound is not about trying to find a universal truth about what's the meaning of sound for the purpose of my work with my students. It's about looking at many inspired and original filmmakers and people involved in the sound design of these movies have done in the past. There's not really a formal theory that will tell you how to create an excellent soundtrack. But you can look at this work and you can find some guidelines that is very useful for future producers. And most of all, and this is really the topic of my presentation, it allows you to develop a common language so that people in different areas or the different stakeholders from this complex process of making a film are all talking about the same things when they have using the same language, which is not always the case. So some of the words and the terms that I'm going to be talking about are very useful to communicate ideas between editors, directors, directors of photography, sound designers, sound engineers, composers, all these people involved in this process. One of the reasons why the study of sound has not come up as early as the study of visual image in film, there are many reasons for that, and I just point out a few of them. One of them is that naturally we are used to ignore sound. Sound is an unattended modality that our body is used to process. Most of the times we're listening to sound and we don't even realize what sounds are we listening to. We tend to think that our source of information is priority coming from the environment, but it's mostly visual. So we tend to prioritize or to think that we prioritize visual information, mostly because I would say that most of the sounds that we hear, we don't know that we're listening to them. Actually, if I shut up right now, you will listen to a buzz coming from that projector over there that most of you already segregated. You don't listen to it anymore. You just don't pay attention to this, but it's still being processed in your brain. And the main reason why I think that it took a long while for the first literature to come up in this area is that, in contrary to film and image, and this is related with the talk of Professor Isabel, this idea about the present, past, and future. In fact, if it is true for image that we cannot freeze time unless we look at film, for sound, not even that, because the moment you listen to a sound, it's already in the past. You cannot freeze sound and analyze its color, its lighting, its scenography, like you can do with image. So it makes it very difficult for us to analyze it in the same way. It is possible, of course, and it has been done, and now there is a framework that we can look at, but this is what I think the reasons why it took a while to get there. And the other thing that also not everyone thinks about is that in the industry, making sound design is not about showing off. In fact, in the industry, the best sound design is the one that you don't notice. Is the one that only creates a predisposition for a scene, and the one that helps you, influences you, induces you to interpret the scene. And as you will see, this is a very relevant concept in advertising, marketing, and branding today, and it's being used, in fact. So I will now try to give an overview of how this process of designing sound is seen in very practical terms in the industry. Basically, when we talk about a film project, we have three main categories that often are undertaken by different specialists. One of the main topics that we have to deal with is dialogue and voices. We'll be showing you some examples. The other part, and very important part, is the sound effects and what we call Foleys. I will give you also an example of that. And this is very relevant, and most people don't even notice that they're there. And music, yeah, music people notice. Everyone knows. And usually the misconception about sound in film is that it's all about music, but it's not. There's a lot of information that you acquire from a film experience that is not related with music, but it's related with the environmental and the designed sound. So let's start by looking a little bit into dialogues and voices. So I'll show you some clips. This is from a TV series, and this is the footage that was recorded at the soundstage without any sound or music post-production. All you're going to listen to is the voice of the actors as he was recorded in the studio.
I'm sorry, it's taking longer than I expected. These gloves are making the work so much slower. Don't worry about it. Still got 4 minutes before the energy dips too low and you can't make the jump. Yes. We're at it.
Okay, this is recorded in a sound studio, so in a sound stage. So the quality of the sound recorded from their voices is actually quite excellent. In fact, in this case, since they are wearing helmets, they just have to put a microphone inside, and the sound of their voice will be quite perfect. So we can use those voices. We can use those recorded voices. You just have to record one on each channel, and it's perfectly fine. That will not always be the case. Most of the times we cannot do that because the sound of the recording of the voice is mixed with the environmental sound, and it's unusable for post-production. Once you get to put the music and the sound design on this, then you will see a totally different film, I think.
I'm sorry, it's taking longer than I expected. These gloves are making the work so much slower. Don't worry about it. Still got 4 minutes before the energy dips too low and you can't make the jump. So no pressure then.
So you see that the drama, in terms of they're pointing out in certain moments, it becomes very assertive, and now you know exactly how to interpret emotionally what's happening in this scene. So basically, when you have a practical film production, either you can have what we had there, which is the case for most of television series productions. You have a sound stage, you record the audio indoors, and you can use directly the expressiveness perfectly recorded and registered at the moment of the acting from the actor. But some other times, and this is what happens when you go to the outside and in the field recording, you cannot record perfect clear voice. You have to use those boom microphones that will record everything around. So you have to do what we call the ADR, automated dialogue replacement, which means that you have to go into a studio and ask the actor to replace all the dialogue so you can get a clean, clear recording of the voice. And this is not easy to do. This is a requirement that, especially in the United States, where this kind of processes were developed in the industry due to the economic power of this industry, Of course, they have the means to do this in a different way than the rest of the world, and in India as well. Of course, the actors are required not only to be able to act, but they have to also be able to repeat their acting perfectly the same later on in the studio to overdub those voices. There's another kind of requirement that most of the times now actors have to comply with, which is making voiceover for narrator. Very often, you know that Morgan Freeman, called also known as the voice of God, is the most well-paid narrator in the American blockbuster movies. And interior voice, which is about the actor trying to convey the idea of his own thinking and feelings through voice as like an inner voice. And very interesting paradigm shift happened with animation, especially computer animation, because today voice is the main reference for the animation characters. I will show you an example of what I mean. So this is the famous Antonio Banderas.
Very well. If it is to be a dance fight, then I will choose the night dance fight you to the death. Very well. If it is to be a dance fight, then I will choose the night dance fight you to the death. How dare you do the little box at me? How dare you do the little box at me?
So different takes with different expressiveness. And now let's look at her partner, Salma Hayek, doing the both Hispanic American actors.
That's a lot of heel for a guy, don't you think? That's a lot of heel for a guy, don't you think? That's a lot of heel for a guy, don't you think?
And then what happens is that the animators take these voices, and this is the only organic, real-life element that they use as reference to create all the expressiveness of these computer-generated characters. If I can get my mouse to appear. There.
And you own.
I owe you.
Mm-hmm. You hit me in the head with a guitar.
I regret the guitar.
Okay, so only taking those voices as reference, they modulate, they create this expressiveness for these characters. And also, of course, looking at the video from the recording sessions as well. But the main driver is the voice. So this is a paradigm inversion, because as you are well aware, sound is almost always subordinated to image, and this is the other way around. Now, with animators, these actors, they have to perform so that their voice will give the power, that will empower these characters to be expressive as well. Then there's this all other department, let's call it this way, department of production called the sound effects and Foley. So what is this sound effects and Foley? Well, it's everything else other than voices and music. So all the environmental sounds that people are not even aware that they are there, but if they are not, you will certainly miss them. And I'll just show you a very short video about the Foley artists creating all the sounds required for a very simple scene that could be in any kind of fiction, short film or feature film. So you will see that you have someone walking and he has to go on top creating the sounds of the cloth, the footsteps, and then there's someone coming in the back and is also doing that. Everything is still mixed. So at least there is 5 layers of sound that are produced in post-production. And so this is what we call Foley. I will not get into the history of sound design. There's a lot to say. There will be another 3 hours topic just talking about history. But this just gives you an idea about these Foley artists, what they do. And the sound effects are actually very efficient. Actually, they are very value efficient in terms of the budget of the movie. If I tell you that there is a movie of Woody Allen where there's a car spectacularly crashing, you probably won't remember that this is true, but in fact it exists. But the way Woody Allen did it is the way that you would expect. It doesn't actually show the car crashing, only the sound effect. I'm sure they didn't crash the car. But they use the sound effect, and in fact, many times doing it like this is even more effective than actually showing the full car crashing. You know, let's leave something for you to imagine. This is the power of literature as well, and you can transpose it to film this way. I'm just going to show you a little bit about how, it's just a short, I'm not going to show the entire clip because I don't have time for that, but this is an example of how with these sounds, different sounds that are from our daily objects, you can actually move towards music, which is the topic that I'm going to be talking about. So using soundscapes, what we call soundscapes, or you can design this sound and merge it into musical forms and create very interesting musical textures. And this is one example of how this can be done. And of course, you realize that more and more in film production, we have a lot of these kind of sound design musical textures. Computers to edit and slice and cut and mix the sound, you can actually take these small snippets of recordings and make it into a musical sound, if you like. So let's talk a little bit about music as it is understood in the other department in the film production industry. So music is very powerful. We actually mentioned this before in previous presentations. It makes you it establishes the genre of the movie to start with. It makes you understand the movie in a totally different perspective. I will show you two examples of the same movie or the same section of a movie with two different musics, and you will see that you will see a totally different movie. So this would be probably a horror or a thriller movie, okay, but the same images. So I say that even the expression of the actor looks very different. I really don't remember in the other one to see him smile or doing this naughty smile. So not only it establishes the genre of the movie, but it actually changes the message embedded in the action of the movie. This is another example from the same series of examples that are very nicely produced by a Hollywood company.
I got this, dude. Okay.
So if I ask you to imagine what's inside that box, right now you'll probably think it's something evil, something that will kill this guy, right? But of course, if you change the music, you might have a different idea. Okay, so I think this is very clear that just by changing, nothing else changed. It's exactly the same audio recording from their dialogue, only change the music. The sound design is the same. And it gives you a different perception of what it is that you're understanding from this scene. Also, I would like to point out about film music is that it is very important that the film music composer is very aligned with the film director, because in reality, in every film, the director has the vision of what he wants to achieve, and the film composer has to be very clear about that his role is to accomplish this mission as well. So it's not surprising that more and more you will see that there are like these duets, of directors and composers. So these are some examples that everyone probably already know about. Steven Spielberg and John Williams. Someone mentioned that Steven Spielberg was the responsible for what was it yesterday about making children films for adolescents in the summer. I found it difficult to believe that Schindler's List is one of those movies, but still, I mean, it's as an interesting work that we should consider. Hitchcock and Bernard Herrmann, of course, and Tim Burton and Danny Elfman, all of these have been working in many, many movies together. And recently, I think last year, this composer, Alexandre Desplat, some of you might have heard of him, is a very interesting, and in my opinion, very interesting composer. He was invited to come and give a series of lectures about his mindset, his framework to develop music for film with very well-known film directors. He actually was awarded with an Oscar for The King's Speech, and also not for the music, but this Girl with the Pearl Earring, as you know, is one of the recent movies that was also awarded with some Oscars for some of the areas, especially photography. But Alexandre Desplat was actually talking to a very small group of people in Guimarães who came over for the European Capital of Culture and gave us an insight about his process. So I thought that, okay, so since I had this information from this guy directly and he explained to me what his ideas were, I just figured it would be maybe interesting to tell you a little bit about what he thinks about when he's trying to develop this film music. So I don't know if many of you have seen this movie. I imagine that some of you have seen it for sure, The Girl with the Pearl Earring. But if you haven't, this is a story about Vermeer, the painter, that fell in love with his maid. But since he's married and he's a well-known painter, and of course this is a forbidden love. And the movie is all about this forbidden love, these unspoken feelings that people have. So what the composer was trying to achieve was a soundtrack that, in a way, talks about this idea of unspoken and feelings that are muffed inside of you. And the way he did it was to create music with actually muffing the instruments. So you see some brass and some piano, and he actually was muffing these instruments with some devices to make it sound a little more bassy and unusual sound. So let's listen a little bit to it, and maybe you can see how this comes across in the music.
Some colors.
So I think it starts more in front. So all these instruments are actually muffed with cloth to create this deep sound. So his expectation is that the audience will have this feeling of that something is wrong with this sound. They won't be able to exactly tackle what it is, but there's something that is making this sound a little bit more muffed. And they will maybe feel the same way that the actor was feeling. So, get back to the mouse. I don't have any other examples from this, but there's a lot of, from in my module I usually present, he really gave me a lot of insight about his process, and I think it's actually very interesting. But anyway, this gives you an idea about what composers are thinking how they think when they are trying to convey a message. And I will now move on to talk about another approach to look at sound in film. I think I have about 10 minutes to go, so do I? No, we need to have discussion, okay. So I'll make it very brief. So basically I'll skip some slides. Just to let you know that there's some theory that you can look at. I would recommend starting by Pierre Schaeffer, Traité des objets musicaux, which is one of the first books that tell you how we can talk about the perception of sound, how we can analyze it in different ways. I will not go into this now, but I will tell you the simplified version. Also, interesting to listen to look at is from Pauline Oliveros. She's developed another concept that's more related with professionals in this area. It's called deep listening. So that's when you actually get to listen some more by being an expert in this field. But I would definitely recommend this book from Michel Chillon, Audiovisual. I think it's the seminal book in this area. And that basically tells you about the three main listening modalities that we might have, which is causal listening, semantic listening, and reduced listening. I will talk about the first two ones because I think are the most important. Let's say I imagine that no one here speaks Korean. If you listen to someone speaking Korean, you will probably, by doing the causal listening, if you are in the causal listening mode, you understand that this person, that the sound source that you're listening to is actually a person. You might even tell it's a man or a woman, and you might even tell what is their state of mind. But you don't understand what they're saying. In order to do that, you have to go into the semantic mode, and then you have to understand the language, and then you have to understand the semantics of what's being told by this person. So this is actually useful. And then from sound, in sound design, it's very common that you also look at these two types of sound. It is the diegetic and non-diegetic sound. So very briefly, diegetic sound is everything that is real and that would be real in the scene that you would shot. Non-diegetic sound is everything else. Let's say music. We don't have music usually in our life. All these incredible sound effects. And I will just show you one example of how this can be used. So I'll skip all of this. I have one wonderful example that you should look at, which is the Dogville from Lars von Trier, where the sound has a very important role in the immersion of the film. But the example that I like to show, and maybe I will do I have to close now? How long do I have? I'll close with this example. No, I'll close with this and another one. So this movie, many of you probably seen it. You probably won't admit it, but you have. It's Before Sunrise. It's a romantic comedy. No, it's not a comedy. It's a romantic movie. It's very interesting in many ways. Very profitable movie, and it's a story about this couple that fall in love in a train, and then they spend the night together in Vienna. And this is the part where they will be separating themselves. So I will just show you the movie, and then I'll explain to you what was the mindset that the director had in terms of analyzing this in terms of the diegetic and non-diegetic sound, and how important that was to understand what he wanted to convey.
The first thing you're going to do when you get back to Paris?
Call my parents. What about you?
I don't know. I'll probably go pick up my dog, stay with a friend of mine.
Did you go?
Yeah.
Go.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
What?
Oh, I don't know. We're back in real time.
I think I hate that.
What's that?
It sounds like a harpsichord.
Check that out.
Okay, so the point here is that this music starts, actually it starts in the previous shot and then the cut comes. So it starts with the harpsichord music. So this is Vienna, they are there, so it makes sense that this is the background music. So when you first listen to this music, you will perceive it as being non-diegetic music. Music that is there just for the sake of creating an environment, but it's not meant to be part of the music that was actually being played by actual characters in the movie. It's just an environmental music that creates the mood for this scene. And then they start talking about their magical nights while we listen to this music, and at some point the actor says, "Oh, we're back in real time." And when he says we're back in real time, immediately at that moment, they also realize that the music is actually diegetic music, that the music is coming from the actual character, an actual character that is playing in this basement in Vienna. And so the idea, I think, is that this emphasizes even more the transition from the magical night to the real world and to the reality that they will now have to face from that moment on. And so this is the way you have to think about these things, how to use, and there's many other approaches that you can analyze this kind of musical content as well. So I will now move forward quite a lot, and I will show you one last slide. I think if I play this song, everyone will recognize it. Okay, so this is considered to be the most well-known sonic logo, sound logo in the world today. Well, it won't be because Nokia probably going to be going out of business, but everyone knows this sound. But then this sound not only tells you that it's a familiar sound, but also tells you the name of a brand. And so you can see how powerful sound can be for brands. Now, what I'm going to show you next is probably only going to make sense for the Portuguese audience. Probably the other ones are not expected to know this other sonic branding example that I will show, but I will ask the Portuguese people if they do know this sound. Esta pele. So it's the national television. Channel 2, the one that matters. It's actually been designed. This was designed by one of our students from Porto. He did his master's degree there. It's a very interesting project about sonic branding and the whole design of the sonic branding of the Channel 2. This same tune, the same idea, is designed in many different ways. This is another. It's the same notes. So you recognize it as being the same sonic logo, but it's designed in different ways. And in fact, it is designed also to match different contexts. For instance, the Olympics in China. Okay, they make it look a little bit Chinese, at least Chinese to the Westerners' perspective. So sonic logos are no more nor less than what Wagner came up with in the Ring of the Nibelungs, which is the leitmotif, something that many of you are familiar with, this idea of having a musical theme that is related with either a character or a moment or even a time zone, different times you have different leitmotifs. And of course, this is a very powerful tool for filmmaking, as many others. I mean, this is like my last 6 sessions of my module where I just spoke about these techniques. And I will leave you with one of the most well-known leitmotifs. You don't really need to see the character to know who he is. So when you listen to this one tune, you know who's inside that ship. I didn't really need to show. I would also say that this is one of the ringtones that is most often used for mother-in-laws. And so I will conclude here. So if you have any questions, please find my website, email me. I have some of these slides much more complete on SlideShare, so you can download it from there with the full module, and it's openly available. You can actually even, I encourage you to use this to teach to your future students if you want to. I'm very happy to donate all this collection of work that I've been doing for other people to spread the word about sound. Thank you.